To my menopause muses, I wanted to have a little chat to you around the subject of prolapse and menopause. So, in the first place, prolapses aren't a gimme. You're not necessarily going to be that woman that has a prolapse. But firstly, let's talk about what is it, um, maybe the symptoms, the treatment, and prevention. So I think there's just a handful of things that I just like to cover, partly because I have had prolapses, so I'm talking from a place of personal experience and a few surgeries, but also from a professional point of view. Because I am still a Pilates teacher and I do work with a lot of menopausal women, and sometimes the symptoms will present as back pain. So that tends to come up in my Pilates sessions or my pliability sessions. So firstly, let's talk about what on earth is a prolapse. So when we're dealing with a pelvic organ prolapse, we are dealing with the uterus, the bladder, or the rectum. And they become weak and heavy, and it's a combination of reduction of estrogen in the body, weakness maybe through trauma, but also and that trauma can be also through childbirth, big babies, fast deliveries, for example. And so you don't have to have prolapse isn't one thing. It is made up, I think it's five, let me think, that five things. So you have a back wall prolapse, a front wall prolapse, you have a bladder prolapse, then you can have a small intestine prolapse, and then finally a vaginal vault prolapse, where the top of the vagina is loose and weak. And symptomatically, sometimes it just feels a little bit strange. Undercarriage feels a bit weird. Maybe if you're going for a poo, there's a bulge. And for some women, you might need to insert fingers and sort of press back to be able to have a poo. It might be that actually there is, in severe cases, it is literally coming out of the vagina. But also there might be urgency around bowel movement, urgency around wee, and other things will like dragging, heaviness, those symptoms when we have like really bad periods, that kind of heaviness, dragging, and some women have no symptoms at all whatsoever, and are quite happily going away doing their own business until menopause hits, and it's like, oh bloody hell. So the bladder, I think that there was a load of work and research, because a lot of women many years ago, were having bladder lifts using mesh. There's that came up in court. We've all heard stories about it. There are other techniques to address and target the bladder and supporting the bladder. Kegels alone aren't always the answer, so sometimes you have to kind of mediate symptoms, which means that sometimes you might need a surgical intervention to support you with the prolapse, and work on things like Pilates and your mental well-being, because sometimes the symptoms and the surgery may affect your mental health and how you feel as a woman, the other side of it. And then also to maintain, because that would come under that chronic health banner, if you like. So I know that I've had a full vaginal vault hysterectomy, and a full vaginal vault prolapse. I have also had posterior wall prolapse. To give you, so your cystocele, which is the bladder, you got your ontrocele, which is the small intestine, rectocele, which is the back wall, uterine, which is the bladder, and then the vault, which is the whole shebang. It's not gimme. So here's the thing, it's like, we're here to give you information and support you around these subjects. This is like you being empowered. It's not a gimme. You're not necessarily that person that, oh Christ, there's something else that's going to go wrong with me. But actually there are a lot of women that are going, it just doesn't feel the same. It feels a bit weird. When I wipe, it feels strange. I struggle to poo, or I struggle to wee, or I go for a wee and stand up and wee again. And there might be things that are going on that you think is connected to menopause, or you think it's just to do with your aging process, or it's been so subtle and so gradual you've not really noticed any changes around your continence. And then, so this is about information sharing and being proactive. So for me, I'd take it back to those days when I had big babies, so 9-pounders, and fast delivery. So my first baby was within 4 hours, but my second baby was within 15 minutes. And she was 9-pound-8, so she shot across the room and, you know, splattered off the wall. It was just like carnage for me. And my weakness began then. So for me, in early 30s, I had a rectocele prolapse, back wall prolapse, that involves surgery. I'm a Pilates teacher. Can you imagine how horrified I am thinking, Pilates didn't save me. Pilates wasn't the answer. But actually, it's worked out in my favour, I suppose, because it enabled me to connect with other women who were in similar situations to me. So I really do understand what on earth is going on with our anatomy. So I had that then, and I had little girls at the time, so it was quite a struggle with recovery. But then I went on for years and years and years. As estrogen leaves the body, and I noticed that on our Menopause Muse group recently, we're talking about collagen. Collagen is part of our makeup, and this is why it's promoted and pushed so much as we age, because we need collagen to keep the ligaments strong within the body and the tendons, so the connectors between bone to bone and then muscle to bone. And tendons and ligaments are part of the fibrous tissue that makes up the pelvic floor. So if you imagine that collagen is leaving, as estrogen is leaving your body, there becomes a weakness. I hate to say the word, ladies, but slack. And word, and that weakness happens, and then you've got gravity and life, bit constipation because the diet might not be great, or maybe your things have changed, and then the next thing you know is that it's all feeling a bit heavy and not quite right, or, as I say, bloody back pain. So it can present in many ways. It's not the end of the world. There are lots of things that you can do, such as the Kegel exercises, the pelvic floor exercises that you do with your Pilates teachers to support you, which is why Pilates is so good. But equally, you can have vaginal pessaries, so you can get rings and things to support the walls and lift the bladder. They're perfectly reasonable, and if you don't have a surgical intervention, that would be something that we would talk about at length with you. And then, of course, if you do go down the surgical intervention, then it is managing you long term, because there will be scar tissue and high tone, and we need to sort of manage scar tissue as you come out of your recovery and into the rest of your life. So, you know, sod's law, it's like life's good, and then suddenly it all goes a bit pear-shaped during your menopause years. But I swear to God, you come out the other side and suddenly, like, life's great again, okay? It's a different me. It's a different world. Your outlook and perspective on life can change as a result of your menopause. And maybe if this is you and you are connecting with this video, then, you know, call me. But, you know, menopause isn't the doldrums. It isn't the end of the world. It is about taking control back, being empowered and standing in that power, and taking that confidence to have a conversation with your GP or your specialist, your female health physiotherapist, and talk about these symptoms, because you shouldn't suffer. Nobody should suffer. It isn't a punishment, menopause. It is an absolute wonderful fact of life. And the more we know, the more armed we are to go into our best years of our lives, empowered with knowledge, whether it's holistic or you want to go down the surgical route, whatever it is. It is about taking back your power, because this is a subject that is important to us. and our daughters and their daughters. So this is really, really good stuff. So prolapse, that's the subject. I hope that it may have triggered a conversation starter for some of you. I'm going to finish this with one thing. We check our breasts. Most of us have been conditioned to do that on a monthly basis. Let's try doing the same with the pelvic area. And you might feel horrified, you might not want to look, quite frankly, but it is important to check changes, to see if there's any colour changes or variations, things like, you know, moles, change of colour to the vulva, maybe insert a finger or two. How does it feel? You might already be aware that things don't feel quite the same. And with that, if you're feeling sensitive or it's uncomfortable to have sex, or any kind of sexual activity, that all feels a bit weird and a bit strange. Again, it's not normal. Record it. Write a journal about what you're feeling and experiences, because it is so important. The more we manage your well-being, happier you are, the happier the world is around you, right? If you've got any questions about this subject, and I'm literally giving you a touch upon this subject, but if you've got any other questions, please contact us through the Menopause Muse pages. But you can also contact us on info@icareandmove.com, and we're always there to have a conversation with you and support you.